Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today for today's edition of the Bava, kamma 78 Omid B. So let's go. The Gemara asks, with regard to sacrificial animals, it is also stated in the first part of the verse, a bull or sheep, Leviticus 22:27, which are two kinds of animals for which you cannot produce diverse kinds, and accordingly let us include an animal of diverse kinds as being fit for sacrifice on the altar on that account. The Gemara answers, from the fact that the latter clause of the verse, or a goat, serves to exclude a type of animal from being fit for sacrifice on the altar, it may be inferred that the first clause of bull or sheep also serves to exclude a type of animal from being fit for sacrifice on the altar. We will ask, on the contrary, one could equally argue that from the fact that the first clause of the verse serves to include a type of animal as being fit for sacrifice on the altar, the latter clause also serves to include a type of animal as being fit for sacrifice on the altar. The Gemara rejects this argument. What is this comparison? Granted, if you say that both expressions serve to exclude types of animals from being fit for sacrifice on the altar, this is why two exclusions were necessary. One exclusion is referring to diverse kinds, and the other referring to an animal that resembles another species. And even though an animal of diverse kinds is excluded, it was still necessary to exclude an animal that resembles another. But if you say that both phrases serve to include types of animals as being fit for sacrifice on the altar, why are two inclusions required? Now that the animal of diverse kinds has been included in the first inclusion, is it necessary to say that an animal that resembles another is also included? There is more justification for including an animal that resembles another, whose parentage is entirely of one species, than for including an animal of diverse kinds. The Gemara has established that when the Torah used the word seh, this is 21:37, in the context of theft, it does not serve to exclude animals of diverse kinds. The Gemara asks, if so, what is meant by this statement that Bava says with regard to the verse, the ox, the set of a sheep, and the set of a goat, in Deuteronomy 14:4, that this establishes a paradigm for the cases, teaching that wherever the word set is stated in the Torah, it serves to exclude only an animal of diverse kinds. With regard to what halacha did Bava state this principle? If this principle is referring to the halacha concerning sacrificial animals, it is written explicitly with regard to them, a bull or sheep, in Leviticus 22:27, which, as taught in the aforementioned Braita, serves to exclude diverse kinds. If this principle is referring to the halacha concerning animal tithe, so what does that mean? In Lamaser, the early commentaries raise an obvious question. This verse does not mention the word set at all. How then could Rava's principle possibly apply to it? Rashi explains that the suggestion is that Rava's halacha applies to the word son, just as it applies to the single letter seh. Kalaim Lamaser. The verse kind is regard to animal tithe. All of one's animals must be placed in a pen for tithing, including those with blemishes, or those that are disqualified from serving as offering for some other reason. One should not place an animal of diverse kinds, including a sheep-goat hybrid, in a pen for tithing. 6:13. Concerning which it is written, and all the tithe of the herd or the flock, son, anyone that passes under the rod, the tenant should be sacred unto the Lord. Leviticus 27:30. This principle is not necessary either. The reason is that the exclusion of the diverse kinds can be derived by means of an analogy from the term under in this verse, and the word under in a verse that deals with sacrificial animals. When a bull or a sheep or a goat is born, it shall be 7 days under its mother. In Leviticus 20-27, this verbal analogy, from which many halachot of animal tithe are derived, indicates that the diverse kinds are not subject to animal tithe, just as they cannot be used for an offering. If this principle is referring to firstborn animals concerning which this is written, however, the firstborn among animals, which is born as a first thing to the Lord, no man shall sanctify, whether it be an ox or a seh. It is the Lord in Leviticus 27:26. It is not necessary in that context either. The reason is that it can be derived by a verbal analogy between the term passing in the verse, and you shall cause the path to the Lord all that open the womb, in Exodus 13:12, and the same passing from a verse concerning animal tithe, and all the tithe of the herd or the flock, Any one that passes under the rod of 10 should be sacred to the law in Leviticus 27:32. This analogy teaches that if the firstborn of an ewe or she-goat is an animal of diverse kind, it is not considered the firstborn with regard to the halachot of firstborn animals, which means the Bava's principle is not necessarily here. Generally, you must say that an animal that resembles another is not subject to the halachot of a firstborn. Nidma livchor, with regard to an ewe that gives birth to an offspring that resembles a goat, or a goat that gives birth to an animal that resembles a sheep, the halachot pertaining to firstborn animals does not apply to such offspring. I must say for Kabbalah 2:6, Shulchan Aruch Yerodei 315:5. As it is written, but the firstborn of a bull, or the firstborn of a sheep, or the firstborn of a goat, you shall not redeem, they are holy, in Numbers 18:17. This indicates that the halachot of the firstborn are not applicable unless the following animal is a bull, and the firstborn is also a bull. This excludes an animal that resembles another species rather than its father. Once it is established that an animal that resembles another is not subject to halachot of a firstborn, it is necessary for the Torah to state the same with regard to diverse kinds. Since it is evident that the firstborn status does not apply to diverse kinds, Bava's principle is not required here either. Bava's principle was stated with regard to the redemption of a firstborn donkey. One may not redeem a firstborn donkey with any animal other than a sheep or goat. An animal of diverse kinds may not be used for this purpose. Rambam Sefer Zevayim Bikurim 12:8, in which it is written, and every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a seh, Exodus 13:13, as we learn in the Mishnah Bachorot 12a. One may not redeem a firstborn donkey neither with a calf, nor with a non-domesticated animal, nor with a slaughtered animal, nor with a treifa animal, nor with diverse kinds, i.e. a she-goat hybrid, nor with a koi. With a koi, many problems arise in trying to identify the koi. It is mentioned numerous times in the Mishnah and the Gemara, not because it is a common animal, but rather because it is used in discussions that explore the application limits of the halachot concerning domestic animals versus wild animals. As early as the Mishnaic period, the sages disagree with regard to the identification of the koi. Some maintain that it is a hybrid born to a goat and a deer or another kosher wild animal. According to many researchers, the koi is identified as the water buffalo. There are allusions to this identification in some medieval rabbinic sources. Others reject this idea and claim that water buffalo did not live in Eretz Yisrael during the time of the Mishnah when the koi was first mentioned. Others maintain that the koi is a muflon, a subspecies of wild sheep, although there are a number of opinions as to the specific subspecies of muflon it may be. There is also uncertainty with regard to both the origin of the term koi and its popular vocalization. And we have the Gemara here, the standard shells that I'm using on page 93. There's a picture of a water buffalo and a muflon. However, the principle is referring to the source for the prohibition against using an animal diverse kinds for the redemption of a firstborn donkey. The Gemara asks, whoever who disagrees with this ruling and permits the use of an animal of diverse kind for the redemption of a firstborn donkey. As we learn in the same Mishnah, Rabbi Lazar permits diverse kinds for use in the redemption of a firstborn donkey because it is considered a seh. Only with regard to what halacha is Rabbi's principle relevant. Rabbi Lazar could have said to you, Rabbi's principle was stated with regard to a non-kosher animal that was born from a kosher mother, whose impregnation was from a non-kosher animal. Rabbi is saying that this animal is not kosher. And this is not according to the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua, as if it were according to the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua, although he would agree with this halacha, he derives this halacha Sibachot 7a from the phrase the set of sheep, kavasim, and the set of goats, izim. See that in Hebrew? Izim. Deuteronomy 14:4, the plural forms Kesavim and Izim indicate that a lamb is not kosher unless both its father is a sheep and its mother is a ewe. The same halacha applies to a kid. The Gemara asks with regard to the case under discussion, but can a kosher animal be impregnated by a non-kosher animal in the first place? V'ladsha tahora udmeya. All kosher animals belong to the order of order Aticodactyla, also kloof-hoofed or even toed, whereas most non-kosher animals are so dissimilar to this group that crossbreeding is impossible. Even camels and pigs, which are part of the order Aticodactyla, belong to different families, and therefore crossbreeding between kosher and non-kosher animals in general is not possible. Is it even possible for this to occur? Why do Rabbi Yeshua and Rava have a biblical source to deem this offspring as non-kosher? The right answer is yes, it is possible, as we maintain elsewhere in Bachot 7a. That's the end of the Omid. Thank you for listening and all the best. Bye.